The Houston Texans have to get to 53 by Tuesday afternoon on their roster. What surprises could be in store and on the table in the next couple of days? Let's go through it with my friends at BetUS. A 125% bonus on your first three deposits up to $2,000 in my link in the description down below. So a surprise on the roster has to be somewhat realistic. It can't be, hey, trade Dameon Pierce, cut Cam Akers, and just have Daria Gumbawale and the rookies be the running backs behind Joe Mixon. No. We're not doing that. This has to be at least somewhat in the realm of possibility, which will go to tell you how tenuous some of the back end spots of this roster are. Let's start over on defense. Let's start at the defensive end spot. What if Jerry Hughes didn't make this team? That'd be a bit of a surprise to me. Jerry Hughes being out would be my surprise at defensive end. The Texans' top three defensive end spots are locked up. That's going to be Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. And then Derek Barnett is the key backup behind both of those guys. And then Jerry Hughes would slot in there as the fourth defensive end more than likely. Hughes is brought in initially, I thought, because they weren't going to have Dylan Horton available, but it seems like maybe the Texans knew about Danico Autry's situation, and that's why the veteran Jerry Hughes was here. It'd be a little bit of a surprise because Hughes has had a pretty good camp, and as a fourth defensive end, cast as a guy that's in there just to go get the quarterback of the opposing team for a few snaps, it would make a lot of sense that he works out as the fourth defensive end for this team. You don't play as many snaps. He's a full go in the snaps that he does play at his age. It would make sense. But it would also make sense if the right veteran came available who had a little bit less wear and tear, and they could play that player a little bit more than they could Jerry Hughes with confidence. That's maybe where the Texans could go elsewhere instead of Jerry Hughes. I don't know that this one's super likely, but that'd be my surprise at defensive end. At defensive tackle, my surprise would be that Marcus Harris makes the team. And look, I feel like there's actually a pretty good chance that Marcus Harris could be the fourth or fifth defensive tackle, depending on how many this team keeps, because we know about the first two. Foley Fatukasi and Mario Edwards are the starters at defensive tackle. Khalil Davis, to me, feels like number 3 on the defensive tackle depth chart. So could Marcus Harris sneak in there, the rookie out of Auburn that the Texans drafted late in the 2024 NFL draft? I just watch him in training camp and even in the preseason games, and he is just so violent at the point of attack. He's not the biggest defensive tackle in the world, so he might need a little bit of growth, but he's put together a couple of nice moments here over the course of the entirety of the preseason. And I feel like it is absolutely possible that he could make the spot at defensive tackle as the fourth or fifth defensive tackle. Again, this is a situation where a veteran maybe fits a little bit better than Marcus Harris just based on what the Texans are going to do. A guy that maybe has experience in the system or has the ability to just play a little bit more than you maybe trust a rookie initially in 2024. You'd only be a couple of snaps away with two veterans who've played a lot of football, and Fatukasi and Edwards as the starters. You'd only be a couple snaps away from the rookie maybe being a starter at the defensive tackle spot. It would be a little bit of a risk there, but I like what Marcus Harris has done in the preseason. And if he's not on the roster, absolutely try to get him on the practice squad. The surprise at linebacker to me at this point would be if Christian Harris isn't on short-term IR to begin the season. Harris was hurt all of training camp with a lower leg injury, shows up for half a practice, seems to re-injure that leg, and then finds himself out yet again. And at this point, 2 weeks before the season gets going, and then another 4 weeks, like it could take 6 weeks for him to get better before Christian Harris is back out there. I mean, I'd be shocked if he's not on short-term IR just because of the re-injury, the severity that clearly has kept him out. He hasn't been working out on the side at this point, so he's not close. So Christian Harris, I believe, is set to miss the first 4 games of the season, but it'd be a nice surprise if we knew he was only going to say miss Indianapolis or maybe a couple of games to start the 2024 season. But I would think that that short-term IR is the likely scenario. So it'd be a surprise if he didn't end up on short-term IR. At the cornerback spot, man, they could do a lot of different things to surprise me, but here would be the surprise at cornerback. Jeff Okudah and CJ Henderson make this team. That would give them a couple of backup options on the outside. They'd likely use that last cornerback spot, if they're keeping 5, to have an inside backup for Jalen Petrie, who primarily has been playing that nickel and slot corner spot for the Texans. But Okuda's been injured, been banged up here for the past few weeks here in Texans training camp and in the preseason, but had put it together for a couple of days prior to his injury. CJ Henderson would be the bigger surprise. I just don't know that he has showcased enough. He had the rough moment in the preseason game against the Steelers, and then he didn't play a lot with the other starters or perceived starters very much after that, even in practice, in training camp moments. So CJ Henderson sticking around would be a surprise, but keeping Okudah and Henderson would be quite the surprise. I don't know that Des King getting cut is a surprise at this point, just because you've seen so much Petrie at the nickel cornerback spot, slot cornerback spot, however you want to phrase it. And the Texans did just that with Des King a year ago. They cut him in training camp, and well, maybe they'd bring him back again if they needed him later in the season, just like they did last year as well. Or maybe he's the backup to Jalen Petrie, and he's that 5th cornerback we were just talking about. You know what really surprised me when I was cruising around over on BetUS was I was going through the player stats, and you can bet on so many things at BetUS, and you're going to get a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 when you use my link in the description down below. So many different things. You can already get in on week 1 of the NFL season. Season-long stuff at BetUS is fantastic as well, including player stats. So you go over to football, you hit the little arrow, it shows you all the different things, all the different categories. You go down to player stats, and then you go and find Derek Stingley. Okay? All right. How many interceptions do you think Derek Stingley is going to have this season? 6, 7? I mean, he was phenomenal when he came back from the injury last year. So that's got to be a really big number, right? Right? Not so fast, my friend. So you pull up BetUS, you find Derek Stingley there under the player stats, and you see it's 2.5. 2.5 is the number? I mean, come on. This has got to be an easy over for you. You hit that over, it loads up here on your bet slip, and then you can make your wager. I'm going to put 50 on it. Place my wager, place my bet. 2.5? 2.5? You might have that in the first 6 weeks of the season. He might quadruple that. I mean, my goodness, Derek Stingley over 2.5 interceptions. It's in the books here, and you can get there with America's favorite sports book, BetUS. Hit the link in the description down below for your 125% bonus up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. Let's talk about the safety position, okay? A surprise at the safety spot, which they've had pretty much their desired safeties ready to roll all offseason long. Jimmy Ward stayed healthy to this point. Kalen Bullock has looked really good as a rookie. Eric Murray stayed healthy. Jalen Petrie playing a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, but again, looking good in his opportunity and staying healthy. The only guy that hadn't stayed healthy is MJ Stewart, and I felt like they were going to keep 5 safeties, the 4 veterans, and Kalen Bullock as the rookie, and it would surprise me if MJ Stewart doesn't get that opportunity for the Houston Texans. It just feels like he is the type of guy that they would want rounding out special teams and as a backup in an emergency situation. Now, maybe, just maybe, Kalen Bullock's situation has made Stewart expendable, but it'd be a little bit of a surprise if MJ Stewart is not on this roster. Now, if he's hurt and he's going to come back at some point, that would make a lot of sense. But if he's just out and out, not on the roster, not in the plans for the Texans, I'd be surprised by that. That's all the defensive surprise potential. Let's flip it over to the offense. And as we head to the offense, I'll go ahead and tell you the surprises on special teams would be if there's anybody that's not the current special teamers. I mean, it's Kaimi Fairbairn, it's Tommy Townsend, and it's John Weeks. And I mean, what else is there? They haven't had any competition for their spots, so no special teams surprises. Let's go over the quarterback spot. What could be the surprise here? Well, I'd be surprised if Case Keenum isn't involved in the quarterback room in some way, shape, or form. Now, for a few weeks now, I believe the Texans are going to keep 2 quarterbacks and the third quarterback is going to be on the practice squad. You can promote the emergency quarterback from the practice squad each week an unlimited amount of times as a change in the rules to the emergency quarterback. So I believe that's going to be Case Keenum. Now, I'd be surprised if that was Tim Boyle. Case Keenum, between the ears, is very much ahead of Tim Boyle. But Tim Boyle physically has more in the tank than what Case Keenum does at this point. The arm's stronger. He can dial it up better than Keenum can. But the quarterback spot, especially that third quarterback spot and just being in the quarterback room, it's not always about the physical gifts and abilities. It's about between the ears. So I'd be surprised if Case Keenum is not involved in the quarterback situation going forward for the Texans. All right, here's what I'm sure you've been waiting for. What's the running back surprise? I'm not going to be surprised if Dameon Pierce isn't on this team. I'm not going to be surprised if he gets traded. What I would be surprised is if Dare Ogunbowale wasn't on this team. And I don't know that this is one of the more likely things to happen, but it still exists in the realm of possibility. Let me explain it for you. You've got Joe Mixon, and DeMeco Ryans has spoke glowingly in the past week about Dameon Pierce. And obviously Cam Akers has put together what he's put together. Well, there's three running backs. J.J. Taylor's had a nice camp. British Brooks has shown a little something. Gerard Jordan's had a moment or two. So is it the craziest thing in the world to think that Dare Ogunbowale, who was added back here late in the offseason, would be the guy that would not make the team there as the third down running back? I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world. It's pretty unlikely, and amongst all the things we're going to talk about, probably one of the most unlikely things, but it still exists and would be quite the surprise if Dare Ogunbowale, who weeks ago Bobby Slowick said is one of the most consistent players in training camp, if he wasn't on this team at the running back spot. Now, here's another big surprise. Seems unlikely, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. What if Noah Brown wasn't in the wide receiver room? Now, I've been adamant basically from the beginning of training camp that the Texans have their big three and that fourth spot is locked up, okay? And in that fourth spot's been Noah Brown. But Brown has been hurt basically all of training camp. And I know he was really good last year. In fact, I'm probably one of the people that have talked the most about how he was successful on a per reception basis, about as good as anybody last year in the NFL. I think he ended up with fourth in yards per reception last year. Now, he only played in 10 games, and he certainly didn't have the same counting stats as some of the other guys near him in that category, but that's still an impressive, explosive player. And what if he wasn't on the roster? Now, maybe the injury lingers and he's not on the roster for the first few weeks of the season, but look, we've talked a lot about how John Mechie and Xavier Hutchinson and Robert Woods and Ben Skoranek and Steven Sims have made this a difficult wide receiver conversation for that 5-6 spot. Well, it would get a little bit easier if you knew you could go 4, 5, and 6, and Noah Brown wasn't in the equation. This, to me, is the least likely thing just because of how successful Brown was last year when he did play for the Texans, but it would be certainly one of the biggest surprises if Noah Brown was not involved early on for the Texans in 2024 in that wide receiver room. The surprise at tight end would be Tegan Quinteriano getting to stick around, maybe as a IR player or cut, and then he's a practice squad player. I just don't know that you want to go down that road with Tegan Quinteriano again. Is there a college free agent, an undrafted free agent, a guy with, maybe 1 year of NFL experience that you could get in the building and kind of have that guy set up to be in the conversation of the tight end depth chart a year from now? Quinteriano just has not stayed healthy in his time with the Houston Texans, and I just don't know that that's what you want there on the depth chart. Even if he's going to get healthy here soon or going to get healthy this season, I just don't know if that's the direction you want to go. So I'd be surprised if Tegan Quinteriano gets to stick around. A little comment there about the fullbacks. I'd be surprised if it's anybody that's not Andrew Beck. I mean, they put British Brooks in at fullback a couple of times. That was late in the equation. I can't imagine he knows what he needs to know to be the starting fullback. Troy Hairston hasn't played very well. Bunch of penalties in the final preseason game, and the consistency hasn't been there for him. Dalton Keene got hurt, and then Nick Bowden, who they added this week, just got here. So I'd be surprised if it's not Andrew Beck. Now, if he's hurt and it's a free agent, that shouldn't be surprising for you. But if it's anybody that's not Andrew Beck, who's on this roster as the fullback for the team, well, then that would be a bit of a surprise there for me. So everything except for the offensive line. And here's my surprise here on the O-line. I'd be surprised if Charlie Heck sticks around as that fourth tackle for this team. There are some worthwhile tackle options to replace Charlie Heck as that depth tackle. Look, we know Blake Fisher is the swing tackle for this team. He played left tackle till Laramie Tunsil was healthy, and then he was the backup right tackle in training camp practices. So we know what Fisher's role is for this team. The second-round pick the Texans made, the second-round pick actually the Texans made from this past year's draft. He is offensive tackle number 3 behind Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil. Howard at right tackle, Tunsil at left tackle. So Fisher's the backup for both of them. But who is the fourth offensive tackle on this team? Thought it was going to be Charlie Heck, but the injuries have caught up to him. David Sharp's an option there. And I like Cam Irving potentially as well because he can play a little bit of guard for you and play a little bit of tackle. And then Nick Broker filled in admirably at offensive tackle a couple of different times over the course of training camp. So I'd be surprised if Charlie Heck gets to keep his spot here on this team. What would be your roster surprise? Let me know in the comment section down below. On your way down there, throw me a thumbs up on the video and subscribe to the channel. Again, it's got to be somewhat realistic if you're going to give me a roster surprise. Don't tell me they're trading Davis Mills for a 3rd-round pick and Robert Woods for a 4th-round pick and Damian Pierce gets him a 2nd round. Don't do that, okay? That's not a surprise, all right? Though I would be surprised if you got some good value for any of the players the Texans might think about trading. Got to be realistic if you're going to give me your roster surprise, but fire away in the comments section, and we'll talk about it after the fact as well. Appreciate you watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Check out my friends at BetUS who are offering you a 125% bonus up to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. That link is in the description down below. I can't wait until we talk Texans again soon.